Welcome back, everybody. It's Mark with Exotic Car Play Place, driving along in the E60 M5 today, and I'm going to be talking today. This is one more of that series of the top 10 things that you need to know about the E60 M5. One of the top 10 things about the E60 M5, if you saw my last video, which had to do with the loud cold start, this is sort of in line with that, because this has to do with the startup process, because we're talking about today the startup or the sliding tachometer. And the sliding tachometer in these cars, in the M cars, is a fairly unique feature. You don't see it in a lot of cars. You see it in some of the M3s and the M5s, where BMW has incorporated a system which shows the tachometer that slides and it moves and it regulates based on the temperature and the readiness of the engine to perform. Now, part of that has to do, of course, with engine temp. Part of it has to do with exhaust system temp and the whole packaging, and even just idle time. It all goes into the algorithm, into the computer within the system here at the E60 that tells the computer where the red line should reside in the moment. Now, as the car warms up, red line starts at a very low point, and that is strictly because a lot of the M cars, we all know, have very tight tolerances, because BMW builds tight tolerances into their performance breed of cars like the M cars. And so as a result, they want to make sure that the car has adequate warm time. And without adequate warm time, we already know what can happen with these cars. There's quite a history and an evolution of discussions on the rod bearing problems that you can find, as particularly the M cars, like the the E90 series of M3s, as well as the E60 M5s. And because this is a problem, people panic, but unfortunately there's a lot of factors that contribute to that, and tight tolerance is part of it. Of course, the right oil is part of it, and break-in period is actually part of this. There's a lot of factors that play into the rod bearing problem. Well, BMW sees the warm-up period as very important. As a matter of fact, important enough to include a sliding tachometer. And most of the other BMWs do not have that technology, but they include it in the M series because the M cars, as I mentioned already, have a very tight tolerance. And with the tight tolerances, you have problems with oil not making into the rod bearing area and proper lubrication, and therefore they want to make sure that the user, the end user, you and I, heating up the car properly and giving it all of its appropriate heating that it needs. And of course, with any technology, as you find with the E60 M5's sliding tachometer, there's always a potential for failure. And I've heard of a few potential for failures. One of them being the tach will stick in a certain position, like it'll jam up at 8,000 RPM, for example, and it won't move from there. So there'll be a problem with the tach not doing its work. It basically seizes up. Other issues that I've heard, it won't even heat up at all. Like the car's temperature heats, but the tach won't respond, and you're stuck at the low 6,500 or 7,000 RPM base default Redline. That's another issue. But the one, of course, is the big issue that most of you guys probably don't want to see. And unfortunately, as an E60 M5 owner, there's a very good probability you will experience this, and it is cog of death. And that has to do with usually a serious catastrophic fault, usually an actuator, an idle actuator, a throttle actuator, maybe an issue in the SMG transmission, or some other factor that will ultimately set the car into default dumb mode and will drop your RPMs all the way down to its base default setting and prevent you from driving the car like it was meant to be driven. So for the issues that aren't the red cog of death related, and maybe they're just an issue with the tachometer, there's been some claims on the internet where people have had these failures, and so the first approach by the dealership tends to be a reflash on the computer, because sometimes that will fix the problem. Maybe sometimes this equipment goes out of calibration, and then it'll have an issue where it kind of loses its marbles temporarily, and sometimes on occasion a reflash will work. Unfortunately, what I've seen and what I've heard and the people I've spoken with, a large percentage of the time, unfortunately, it's not software related. It becomes a mechanical issue or something binding or something failed. And what happens is it just dies, and that requires often a new gauge section, or that part of the system may have to be upgraded or repaired or replaced. So sometimes that's the issue, but like I said, you know, that's an occasional thing that can happen, but often I haven't heard of too many stories. That's just the stories that I have heard. That is a possibility. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. It's just a quick talk about the sliding tach, the fact that it's more or less unique to the M cars and very unique to the BMWs in general. And you know, occasionally there can be a failure alongside with that, but it really is something that you need to follow closely in your warm-up procedure. So make sure that you follow that sliding tachometer to the full 8250 before you even consider going hard, and of course that your temperature gauge is reading a good 220. Those are the best sure fit ways that you're going to prevent your engine damage from occurring. Doing things like that, making sure you give it the proper warm-up, making sure you use the right oil, you do a regular oil change regularly. But again, everybody, that's the little bit of feedback I can offer you. That's one of the key elements that's unique to the M5, and I thought I would share that with you in this next video. Be sure to come back on the next one. I've got another interesting video coming up very soon, i.e. maybe it has something to do with more electronics, possibly a dipstick. We don't know, we'll see. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, make sure you give the video a like, comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. I'd love you guys to come back on the next one. It's a lot of fun having these discussions with you guys. I know there's more and more questions that come up every single day, and I absolutely adore it. I love it, guys. It's amazing to have those debates and those discussions with you guys out there. Yeah, not everybody agrees. Everybody's got their own opinion. It's interesting to hear the positive stuff. It's, you know, it's equally interesting to hear the stuff that's not as constructive, but that's okay. That's what this world is about. Let's have those discussions. Make sure you hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, and we'll talk to you in the next one. See you soon. Bye-bye.